Dear Mary.
Hello, Silvia. Lovely to see you.
Yes, 2 years ago.
Is it already?
Yes, a little bit longer.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, so much has changed in our lives, right? Already in 2 years.
Yeah. Has it affected you? How has it affected you, Silvia? How's it been for you?
Yeah, I improved myself in so many levels, and I did studies, I expanded my business, I expanded so much more inspiration. Yeah, I had a fantastic 2 years actually.
Wow. And
Yes.
that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful, given the fact that it's been a big challenge.
Yeah.
Different
I think
ages.
you lived in the hardest country of the whole world.
But I lived in a lovely little rural area where we were not really very affected because it's the big cities that had the problem. For us, it was minimal. And because we're a lot of an alternative community, what's interesting with that is not everybody is so compliant.
Oh, good. So you didn't experience all the hard rules and all the craziness.
We had no lockdowns here.
Oh,
We had
wow.
masks for a few weeks, which I'm afraid I ignored. And we also had what they call contact tracing, where you had to, put your thing up with your. But if you didn't have that, which I deliberately didn't have, you
No.
had to write your name in a book and what have you, and you could make up things. You know what I mean? So that was. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. I was a renegade. And what was wonderful was, I believe, many people stopped from doing the usual things that they do.
Yeah.
Were forced to look at what was important in their lives. And that, I think, was very valuable, because a lot of people have reassessed where they're going, what matters to them. All those big questions start to come up when you're faced with this kind of reality. So that's been brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that's where all the time was for all the improvement, self-improvement, shadow work, the awakening, looking for what is important in my life, where do I want to go, what is supporting me, what is keeping me down. So I think it's actually, if you see the bigger picture, it's like actually a big awakening, and that's what was supposed to happen and what is needed. So exactly. Yes, I'm so happy because you remembered 2 years ago, I think it was January 2020. It was just in the beginning of the Corona hype that we spoke, and that we both knew, okay, there's something big can happen. And now already 2 years later, we talk again, and the time flew by so fast. And I'm really looking forward to talk to you about your new insights, your new ideas, your new research. And before I want to talk with you about this, I actually want to tell the audience who you are and what you have done in the past. And if I am not saying it completely, please add to it afterwards. Mary Rodwell, she is a hypnotherapist, a speaker, an author and a researcher, and a producer of documentaries. She's the founder of ACERN, which is the Australian Close Encounters Network. She has researched more than 3,000 cases of adults and children who consciously remember their connection to other realms, planets, and star families, and also have more advanced DNA. Mary's research is from a spiritual, historical, biological, physiological, and scientific perspective to support her findings and beliefs of a genetic engineering program to upgrade the Homo sapiens. And where I want to talk with you about today is our DNA and the new human, because we both have the same fascination about this. So yeah, I'm happy you came on my podcast again after 2 years, and I'm really, really looking forward to hear all your findings about this topic.
Well, it's an important one, because DNA is really our core in terms of who we are, our blueprint. And what has certainly come to mind is the science behind it has been more and more obvious that we have been genetically engineered. And I talk about that in depth in The New Human. And many scientists are coming and owning the fact that that's the case. What has been found since then is a second layer to the DNA, which they say they're still trying to work out what that is, a new program or whatever. We also understand now that the DNA itself has an ability to create miniature wormholes to other parts of the universe, so that when you have intuition, when you have clairvoyance or clairaudience, or you're connecting multidimensionally, part of that is encoded in your DNA. We also know that 1 gram of DNA can contain enough information that's on all the internet. So in other words, it has a huge capacity for storage of information. And what is that information that's encoded there? And what we're finding out with people being activated, they're starting to remember their origins. They're starting to remember their past lives. They're starting to remember who they're connected to, their star family, whether it's in this realm or whether or not it's in another dimension or other realms or a parallel reality or whatever. More and more people are, as they're activated, becoming more aware of a whole new reality of them as their soul history, for want of a better word, which is part of this shift that's going on now. And the wonderful thing with all these challenges is that it's forcing people to look at what matters in their lives. You know, it's looking at how we operate. What do they really want for themselves? What do they really want for their families? And I've had so many people that this experience over the last few years has activated much of their desire to understand more on their soul journey. And I've worked more and more with helping people. They start to see energy fields. They're starting to see orbs of light. They're starting to see beings, or, you know, energy beings, or little beings, or whatever, or angels, or you know, spirits, or they may fairies, elementals, a whole range of intelligence. And they're saying, what do I do? How do I make sense of this? Because there's nothing in school that teaches you about how to manage this part of your reality. And many people don't understand, so they're fearful if you start saying, well, I'm seeing things, or I'm tuning into your thoughts, because some of them have become more telepathic as well.
Yeah, I noticed it myself as well, that I become more telepathic. It's really funny to experience that. Yeah,
you know what someone's going to say before they say it, and it's strange, isn't it? You know, I think, oh, you know, it's a kind of weird sensation, isn't it? When you,
yeah, because it's something new. You think, okay, do I read somebody's thoughts, or are we on the same frequency? That I pick up their energy or their vibe or their emotion? But I have it more often that you hear a sentence and then in a 2 seconds somebody says it.
Yes, and I think this is going to be more and more our reality. And so what they want is, how do I manage this without losing the plot or losing my groundedness, or, you know, how I'm managing it in my everyday life. And that's been what has been required often for me to help them. I call it learning the operating system of the new car. You know, how does it all work, so that you can have confidence in it, and you can trust it, and you can expand with it. And that's quite a bit of my work now, is to say, well, this is how it works. And part of you already knows what to do. I'm just reminding you that this is how it works, because everyone has this.
Yes.
It's not just a few people here and there. It's everyone. We all have this potential. All it means is that you must want to know how to use it. If you don't use it, you know, you're shutting it down. No, you're not going to experience it. So you've got to want to. open up to it. You want to, and understand it. And it's not, I say it's not rocket science. It's a lot of it is common sense, as once you understand how it all works. And I talk about that. It's in a way, it's about explaining to people how their subconscious works, from their left brain analytical logical side, which is what we use to operate in 3D. With our multidimensional, we're operating from our intuitive subconscious, superconscious higher self. So the information coming in there isn't something that we've analyzed or we've used logic for. It's just there. It comes in like an inspiration.
Yeah, and that combination of the inspiration coming in, your consciousness, that is connected to your DNA. That finding, I think, is very interesting. That your DNA works like a radio receiver of information, and that the more developed or activated DNA you have, that the more information from this field can come in. I think that is extremely interesting.
Well, it gives people something tangible to understand in how it works. It's less, what I call less esoteric and more grounded once you realize that your DNA has the capacity to create these spaces to access the multiverse, to communicate with the multiverse, to communicate not just understand more, but you're communicating with intelligences within that multiverse, so that they are also giving you information. I always say to people, when you're really focused on something you want to know about, you notice that everywhere you go, that information is somehow available. It's like, I always say with someone who's pregnant, once you're pregnant, you seem to think everybody's pregnant because everywhere you go, people are pregnant. But what you're really doing is you're focusing on that particular experience. And so the universe is offering it to you. It's here, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. And that's the same with if you're looking into something, some kind of subject or whatever, it seems that it's being thrown at you from all directions, simply because you've put out that frequency that says, I'm interested in this. And what happens is it starts to come. You find it, and that's how it works. It's a most, I call it quite magical, really, how your consciousness can act in that way to offer you what you are seeking. All you've got to do is put the intent out there, and it comes back. That's
and the meaning of saying, like, what people say what magic is something that the scientific community didn't understand yet. So magic is everywhere when you know how to use it, but it is actually not magical. It's there, only we don't know how to use it.
Yeah. People wonder, I often say to them, do you often get insights? You suddenly get this wonderful idea or wonderful knowing about something or other. And I say, and that's coming from that source. And there's part of you that's put out, I want to know about this, or I want to experience this, or whatever. And that's why our thoughts are so powerful. And they say that we manifest. Well, we actually do. And it's very tangible. It's very real, because we are manifesting from our thoughts what we want to know about, what we want to learn about, what we want to experience. It's all there in our consciousness. And that's what's so exciting about understanding how it works. And of course, with the DNA, it has information waiting for us to uncover as it gets activated through the frequencies. And there's lots of ways it gets activated. We get activated through meeting others that are activated. Also, we're getting frequencies from the planets and from the sun, but we're also getting it from things like crop circles, ancient sites that we go to, and that can activate you as well, because the ancient sites have the codes, and it's all activating consciousness as well. And our own experiences, as we open up, more information is available to us. So we're sending out frequencies as well, which are activating other people. So it's a consciousness that is coming from all of us, not just one person as well. So we've got all these wonderful ways that we've incarnated into being more of what we want to be, which is in a different higher consciousness, which is what we've chosen as a soul. So that's why we've come in, and we're making sure that happens.
Yes, and your research I love also, and I dove into it. Human evolution into, they say, the evolutionary theory that we came from apes, which is of course completely bollocks. That even the scientists then also said that we could not have been developed from evolution, from monkeys, that it has to be engineered with our DNA till the person we are now. And this is for me also incredible to change your perspective, that we didn't just how do you say that, evolved into what we are now.
One of the things that there's various scientific facts that people need to be aware of that aren't always covered. We've got various types of indigenous human, which where we got Cro-Magnon man, we had Neanderthal, Denisonian man, and whatever, and probably a lot of others. But then all of a sudden, there's this missing link. And then we have Homo sapiens sapiens with twice the brain size and higher psychological functioning. So how did that happen? It can only happen because something engineered that. And what's interesting too, the scientists will admit we have 223 genes in our DNA that were a sideways insertion of genetic material into our DNA. Once again, how do you get a sideways insertion of genetic material unless it was put there? And the interesting thing with all of that is there are scientists that know this, but they have to be very careful about who they say it to. And one whistleblower, well, I've met a number of molecular biologists that have admitted to this. And one of them admitted quite clearly that if he talked about this publicly, then he would be vilified because it's still not okay. And yet Dr. Francis Crick, co-founder of the DNA molecule, was one of those that said that he was certain that we had been genetically created by an intelligence. And he was very clear about that. And he said something very interesting, that as we evolve, he believes that they have put something into our DNA that will tell us more about who we are when we reach a certain level of evolution. And I think we're reaching that. Yes. And people say, well, who did it? And all we need to do is look at all the gods that have come to this planet, or seen as gods and perceived as gods, because they were obviously some of them highly evolved with technology that looked like miracles, made them godlike. But in fact, all of those that they were judged as gods, I believe, were these many intelligences that were directly involved in upgrading, our species from the indigenous one to a new evolved human. And this is, to me, this is all logical.
For me as well. For me, we both know this is true, but many people still don't believe in it because they think the world is the only planet in the universe where people live on. And because we researched so much things and so many different sides, like ancient civilization, you also historical and anthropological, we researched so many levels of this concept that we know this is true. And when people start to research it as well, you cannot deny this. You cannot. That it's actually so fascinating that we are so much more than we think we are. And only that if you know our history and if you know the systems where we live in, we are just made unconscious. We are just lied to from our history. And now this is the time that we are finally ready to know the real history in bits and pieces, not at once, because I think there's so much more to experience.
I think you're absolutely correct. And one of the things is that you're not looking at this just from one perspective. You have to look into all these other areas to see where the information has been incorrect. or it's not been interpreted in the way that is a truth. And that goes anthropologically and archaeologically, you know, the archaeological mysteries of saying, you know, that we're only so many hundreds of years, hundreds of thousands of years old or whatever, when they found things like iron nails in rock that's millions of years old, for example, which show that we've had civilizations many millions of years ago, not just a few 100,000 or whatever. So you've got all those kinds of things that, you know, the giants on this planet, that was all hidden, that we have skeletons from all over the world that are giants, and that was a reality, and it's all been hidden. So you've got the ones with the strange skulls that were put down to binding, when some of them, in fact, were not engineered to be were not binding at all. That's how they were. That was, you know, some of the other types of ETs or hybrids of human, for example, and what have you. So when you start looking at that from this perspective, then everything actually makes a lot more sense than the way that we're all taught to believe. But you've got to want to know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. There are some people that say, don't want it, don't want to hear it, don't want to hear it.
Yeah, you have to look out over the border of, no, I always say you have to look over the wall of your belief, because there's a whole nother world on the other side of your belief. And that's what we are programmed for. No, this is the truth, and nothing else is true. So believe this, and everything what we tell you is true, and everything what is outside our story is not true. So yeah, always try to be open-minded to a new reality.
I think one of the things that has happened, because people are opening up and starting to explore, looking for truth, because we've got so much information on this planet now that's very confusing. All different understandings, interpretations, you know, all this kind of information. How do you know what's true? And the only thing you can go by is what you feel you resonate to. And that's what I think is the most important thing now, is to listen to this and to listen to the resonance of the information and what fits for you and what makes sense to you, rather than going on what other people may try and impose on you as a belief system. And I think that resonance to truth is the big one now. And with those that have had experiences, whether it's with angels or whether or not, you know, it's a religious figure, or whether or not it's blue beings with black eyes, or mantis, or all these other different star beings, you know, the Pleiadians or whatever. The great thing with that is it's opening people up to a greater reality and an understanding of our own abilities and awareness and truths from those other levels as well. So when you open up, you can access that. And that's, I think, why many people want to explore their past lives, because it gives them a greater sense of the soul journey and who they might have been. So we're tapping into people their DNA is being activated, and they're starting to connect to that feeling that they're maybe coming from the Pleiades or Arcturus or Andromeda or whatever. And that's the ET DNA that's being activated within us, that's resonating to that origin. And we're saying, you know, I think that's where at least I've been, as one of my origins, because of course we can have many origins. We can come from another dimension.
We have so many types of DNA in our DNA, and that is actually what I also believe is our junk DNA. It's the DNA which is not understand yet, and what is sleeping. So the sleeping DNA, which is now being activated by the frequencies, is remembrance and information of all the other imprints which is in our DNA. And that's why people start to talk light language, because it's just a remembrance of that part of their DNA.
Exactly. And what's great about the light language as they're bringing it in is others hear it and it activates them, because it's a frequency.
Yeah.
Just in the same way as some are bringing in music frequencies from their star systems, which is activating others that come from the same systems. Sometimes it's through artwork. You know, some are creating artwork that when you look at it, it activates an awareness in you as you see it, and a remembrance in it when you see it as well. So there are all these different ways that people are being activated, including people that have had near-death experiences, for example, get activated. For some of those, it might be through a shamanic kind of experience that does, or a healing experience that activates part of their DNA. There are all these different ways, depending on the soul and the soul's choice, what way they're going to be woken up into this greater awareness, which I think is really exciting.
Yes, and do you believe in the process of evolving to the new human? Is this mostly just meant to be, or is it also that we consciously, as a person or collectively, can fasten it or improve it? What do you think?
It's probably a bit of everything.
Yeah.
I think there's a collective desire of humanity that have incarnated at this time to be part of it. But there is also an individual soul journey that is saying that in this particular lifetime, at this point, I want to be ready to move to the next level of awareness or whatever, and have chosen, I believe, prior to coming here, how that will happen. For some people, it might be the sighting of a UFO and having an experience with it. For someone else, it may be having a Reiki healing that does it. For somebody else, it may be a shamanic experience that activates that part of them. It can be one of many ways. And I think that it's all orchestrated with the collective consciousness, which is why so many people are waking up now because of that, but also because their soul has chosen to incarnate at this time to be part of it, and also to bring frequencies from other places as well, because there are those coming from all over the cosmos with frequencies and awareness for different roles they've come here to play in terms of helping the planet get to another place of to accelerate the planet's evolution as well, because it's all tied in together. And I'm probably missed stuff out. But.
Yes, I'm so happy I live in these times, and I'm also happy that I can experience the big change when at this age, because if I would be now like 5 years old, I would not experience the big evolution where we are in now, from the old world to the new world where we are connecting to our cosmic consciousness. So I'm very happy now that I can constantly contribute to it. And I'm also curious, can you tell something from maybe the last 2 years about the children you spoke to or you experienced in their high consciousness, or their activated DNA, or what they experience nowadays?
Well, there's an interesting one. I was just trying to think if I can actually find what I was going to say. Oh, here it is. One of them is interesting in the sense that we're talking about not just physical intelligences, but non-physical ones from other dimensions, other realms. But one interesting one that came in recently is a 7-year-old talking about coming from the future and saying that he's in the future, he's like an ET with only 4 digits and what have you. What was interesting is what he said about and I don't know if it's going to confront people a little bit, but he was shown dinosaur times and future times. He talked about God, and it was interesting that his parents said they never mentioned God in this way, but he said they showed him a vortex type hole, a black hole that isn't a black hole, but has a violet light that creates, so a frequency, which is really, really interesting, is how they were showing him that creative spirit and what have you as well. But he said some of the beings had an IQ of over 400. He said also, I'm just trying to think, but the time travel one was, he said, he's a time traveler from the future. His real form is not his body he inhabits now. He is genderless in that form. And he says that in his alien form, he's really us from the future. They are us and we are them. So that's really fascinating. I mean, he said a lot of other things as well. But the interesting thing about how he understands his part in coming back was very interesting. I mean, there were lots of other things he mentioned, but given that kind of awareness, and that was when he's, 7 years old, some of them are seeing interdimensionally. Some of them say they only need to know a certain frequency of a planet and they can go there with their consciousness. They don't have to go physically, for example. But one of the more recent accounts of families having experiences has been a family that I've only in the last few months connected with. And what's fascinating is all the children are interacting with different beings and drawing them. And the eldest, who's 17, I think she's now painted or drawn 250. All of them she interacts with. She actually draws the pictures of all of them. But so do the younger ones. The 9-year-old draws the one she sees, and the 11-year-old draws the one she sees, and the 14-year-old draws the one she sees. So in the family, they're talking about not just a few interactions with a few intelligence, but actually multiple beings, and they're drawing all of them. They're also communicating with animals. They're communicating with trees and plants, birds, mammals, in the dolphins and mammals as well. So these are some of the abilities now of these new humans, and in families where they really are waking up, the whole family is having extraordinary experiences, from multiple levels. That's just one family, and incredible understanding. So that the other thing that I'm finding is that people are remembering their past life and why they've come in this time, because they didn't achieve perhaps what it was they should have achieved in that past life. And one of them was a lady who had an experience on board craft with a number of her close friends. And they all thought it was a dream. She was on board craft and there were at least 4 or 5 of her friends there. The next day, they all ring her up and say, we had this strange dream where we thought we were on spacecraft, not realizing it was real. And she said what she discovered, because she'd been given an important message about now. She said, I want to know what the message is because I can't remember it. And she went back to a lifetime in Atlantis where all her friends were. They were all light workers, and what they'd hoped to achieve, they didn't. So they've all incarnated this time to make it happen from Atlantis. So what I'm seeing too is a past life connection to some of those light workers coming in that didn't achieve what they intended to before and have come in to make it happen this time. So
yeah. For me, this is like information that is not weird or I know this is true, but for a lot of people who listen to this conversation with you and me, and they haven't experienced this or they haven't researched it, they probably think we are crazy, that we are living in a fantasy world or living in a world where we are believing fantasy. But how do the most people react when you talk about this? And I also want to know is, how do the researchers react about these kind of topics, but also about the children who speak about this?
Interestingly, when I wrote The New Human, I didn't think it would be something read by mainstream generally at all. I expected it only to be read by those that know this is a truth or were seeking truth because of their own experiences or whatever. I've had clinical psychologists, I've had educators contact me saying they're seeing these children and they're recognizing them and their awareness and what have you. So there's quite a few in mainstream that are open to understanding there's something very big going on here, something very significant with our new generations of human. And, as you know from the book, I did a lot to bring in what I call very grounded, tangible data about, the DNA and and the children. And I made sure that, you know, there was information from educators and PhDs and what have you. So this isn't what I call wishy-washy, airy-fairy stuff at all. It's actually, you know, grounded in not one child, not another, just single children here and there. I'm hearing this right across the board. And when you've got whole families experiencing these kinds of, you can't say they're all hallucinating, you know, because it's impossible that every child is going to hallucinate, and the parents and what have you, for example, these kinds of things. And that's been really important to say. A lot of these people are frightened to come out and mention it simply because of the judgment they're going to get. And they might be an academic, a lawyer, a doctor, a nurse, a social worker, saying, I can't talk about this to my colleagues, but this is my experience. And, you know, this is what I mean. It's coming from very credible sources in most cases, not just the odd little housewife that's bored, or, you know, the farmer or whatever. It is right across the board. There are ministers of religion. And as you know, in my book, I've got 2 ministers of religion that are saying how they realized that what they were teaching was missing out this huge chunk of understanding about our spirituality, for example. And it's very important for people to realize, yes, it's hard if you haven't experienced that. Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't have a reality. Let's face it, you know, there are lots of people that have had an appendectomy, for example, you know, and gone and had an operation. I haven't had one. I've got no idea what that's like, but that doesn't mean I can deny the fact that somebody does have that. And I remember very early when I was doing this, I was on a breakfast show. And I remember the presenter saying to me, she looked quite amazed at what I was talking about. And she says, you know, do you actually believe them? She said to me, do you believe them? And I said, well, it's like this. I've never been to Alaska, but if enough people have been to Alaska and are telling me about it and have shown me pictures, I may never go to Alaska, but I've got to believe Alaska exists. And really, the same thing. Just because I haven't experienced that doesn't mean someone else hasn't as well, and that it has to be. And this is what people, I think, have to realize is we're all unique in our perceptions and our experiences and what we have. No one's going to have the same experiences as us in our individuality. We may have a consensus reality, but even if you watch, I don't know, an accident, and there's lots of people around all seeing this accident happen, they're all going to have a unique perspective on that accident, depending on their perspective and who they are. And it's exactly the same with this. We have all these intelligences visiting us, and they were considered gods in the past. And I remember this Indian young adult writing to me and saying, Mary, I'm a starseed. And he says, my problem with my family and my relatives and my countrymen is we've got about 100 gods, he said, in India. And he said, and they all worship them as gods. He said, but I know they're just extraterrestrials. He said, but I can't say that because they wouldn't understand. So he's seeing it. He's seeing it in front of him. They're all worshipping all these, and he knows.
Yeah, they're just human. They're just beings from another planet with a higher evolved consciousness who helped humans evolve to the persons we are now, to the beings we are now. It's just, yeah, we tell them, oh, they're gods, they come from the sky and they are more than us. But yeah, that's why we project the gods outside of ourselves instead of, oh, we work together and they learned us something and probably we learned them something else also.
Oh, I'm pretty certain. But what is also interesting is that many of those star beings have incarnated into human form right now to help this planet evolve. So when they say, well, why aren't they helping us? Well, they're actually doing exactly that. But they're doing it because in a way that won't challenge us and frighten us by coming in and incarnating in a human form to help with this mission. And lots of star seeds, the children as well as the adults and older generations, have this sense of mission and purpose, that they've got a job to do, and they've come in with different talents. I mean, what's fascinating to me is some, respected professionals. And I did a session with a veterinary surgeon in Chile, in South America, who was opening up to lots of this. And she tells me now that what she can do is she can tell the pet's owner what is going on for the pet. She communicates with the pet, and the animal will tell her, and she can pass it on to the owners, including those that have passed on. She will be able to say, your pet, your little dog or your cat wants you to know this, this, and this, and this. She's a veterinary surgeon, and yet she communicates with the animals. Quite open about it. She's, I want people to know I can do this. If they need any help or whatever, I'm happy to do it. She has other skills and what have you. But this is what I mean. It's not just, people, the average down the road that are bored and don't know what to do with themselves. We're talking about professionals with great credibility that are admitting that they can do these kinds of things now. And this we're going to see more of, because it's, when you've got the children talking about communicating with animals, plants, crystals, mammals, birds, right across the board. This is where we're going.
That's the new human that will become us. We all will get skills and all different levels, but I really look forward to this world. I really love to. And I want to mention, Mary, that everybody who is curious about the new human or awakening to our cosmic heritage, this is really, I have to tell you, this is the best book I've ever read in my life. This is the most fascinating book I've read in my life, and I'm reading it again. And every time I pick something different from it that I think, oh, I didn't read it the first time, and I think, wow, your information packed in this book is from experiences of all the children or adults who tell about this, but also from a scientific perspective, what is actually happening in our DNA and what is happening into our consciousness, where we are evolving to, combined with scientific evidence that we are not evolved from monkeys, but something happened to our DNA. And this combination in this book, I really think is fascinating, because yeah, it really makes me so enthusiastic and looking forward to our future as a human being.
Oh, look, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm so happy that it's made so much of an impact with you. I remember when I was writing it, and I made it very clear I wasn't going to censor any of the information, no matter how much it might confront people. I deliberately didn't censor it, but I also wanted to ground it in information that people could follow through. And I did that because I need for my own self to make sure that what I'm talking about or what I'm writing about has a basis in the science as well, because I think it's very important that we feed both left and right brain, that it actually can be in balance and whatever. And I'm very grateful for those coming from that perspective who gave me the information that allowed that to happen. But there's so much more, of course. What I wanted to do with that was highlight it, but also say, what can we do to help these kids? What is useful? Because it's one thing isolating the issue that's going on for them, but how can we help them? What can we do to ground them, to help them become all they've come here to be? Supporting them educationally through, the diet, and through understanding how they think differently and how they look at you and they're reading you. I always remember this 7-year-old explaining to me, he says, I can speak dolphin. And I said to him, he says, do you want to hear it? I said, yeah. So he makes all these clicks and whatever, which is amazing. He says, I can tell when people lie and tell the truth. And I said, well, how do you know how to do that? What does it feel like? And he said, when they lie to me, I go all cold. And when they tell the truth, I feel warm. So that was his way of interpreting the truth of what was going on, which I think was fabulous for him to be able to isolate that. But what's great about these kids is they can look at you, they can read you, and they'll know whether you're not coming from a place of integrity or not.
Yeah, they read your frequency. That's all. What is it about? Our future will only be about frequencies. You cannot hide anything anymore.
That's right. And that's why I feel, despite what's going on the planet right now, people are tuning into the truth frequency. And that is what's really creating the shift, because you have to have integrity. You have to come from that place of truth. And if you're not, then people are going to know it. And this is what's happening now. People are waking up to that. And they're saying, this isn't true. This isn't okay. This is what I need. And that is really what's been amazing about what's happened now, is that it's forcing people and accelerating that ability to say, what's truth? What do I need to know for my future on this planet? So that's what's really exciting. And the kids are leading the way with that.
Yes, and Mary, how do you see the future of the education system where all these young children are in now? Because it's really, there needs to be a big change in education with these kids, because they're all dumbed down and all like boxed in. So how do you see this change? Like, do you see it already?
Well, it is happening anyway, because of the protocols that have been created around these kids to shut them down, and because of all the fear factor that's going on at the moment. Lots of parents don't want their kids going to school anymore because they see what's happening. They see how scared the kids are and not feeling safe anymore. So that's created a bit of a new movement towards homeschooling. But ultimately, what it is also doing is people are seeing the programming that's going on that isn't healthy in these, that are in these schools, how these syllabuses and the way the children are being taught. So what I think is going to happen, and what should happen ultimately, is there'll be a new way of helping these kids understand that they're human and what it's like on this planet or whatever, but creating a safe place for them to expand their abilities, their awareness. And we will be learning from them, because we'll be saying to them, what do you need to be all you know you need to be? What do I need to provide for you to keep you safe, to keep you healthy, to allow you to grow in a way that is empowering so that you can help this planet? So it's going to be almost a reversal of roles from us telling them or putting in these programs to them, and actually saying, now it's what's going to help you be what you want to be. What is it that I need to do? And that is how I see it happening. And these will be a completely new way. And it has to happen, because we've been operating from a 19th century model of programs that are, they're archaic. It's primitive. And these children can read you. They know when something's accurate, because many of them are being taught out of body in other places. They're being taught the true reality. They're being taught how to use their abilities. They're being taught cosmology. They're being taught
quantum physics,
origin of the species. So you can't fool them. They know what they know, and you can't change that by saying, oh, well, this is how it is here, because they can see it's rubbish, and we force children to remember and take on information that has absolutely no relevance to their lives, absolutely no way of teaching them how to be on this planet and be, a happy, healthy individual. It's a lot of the information is absolutely useless, and you forget it. And I remember that, forgetting it as soon as I've done the exam, because it was absolutely useless to me. I just needed to answer the questions right so I could pass the exam. And then all that information would go in one ear and out the other because it wasn't useful to me. And this is what we've been doing, is putting, you know, not everyone's an academic. Not everyone is going to want to go and do that kind of, get that information. A lot of those ones coming in are healers. They're empaths. They are creators. They work with energy. So they're working on a completely different level to the kids that are being programmed sitting in school and learning about something that happened, you know, in the history of our planet, which in fact, as we know, isn't
Not
true history.
No.
Because the ones that write the history are usually the winners of anything, and they've edited it to the way it suits them. And that goes with everything. A lot of our religious books and things have been edited, changed and interpreted and messed around with. So, you know, the actual integrity of a lot of the information is actually lost. And when you wake up to that, it's about, you know, they say that when you open up to this, forget everything you've ever learned or you think you know and start again. Well, it's a bit like that, isn't it?
What is the most fascinating thing you have researched in your life? What do you think is the most fascinating subject you researched?
Well, I think the most fascinating for me is the soul journey, because it's what makes sense of everything. You know, it didn't make sense when I was coming from a religious belief, because I didn't quite, a lot of those things didn't quite fit for me. I didn't see why we should be blamed for what Adam and Eve did for a start. That just didn't seem fair. You know, that happened a long time ago and it wasn't me who ate the apple. So, you know, that kind of thing just didn't quite fit for me. But there were lots of other things as well. So for me, I've wanted to know why I'm here. What's it all about? Can I make a difference by being here? I think that's been the big one for me in my life is, you know, when I get to the point where I'm leaving the planet, I want to be able to look back and think, well, with me being here, did I help at least in some way, apart from bringing beautiful souls like my children and whatever? That's been important to me. But the most important is, did I make a difference? Because that I can pass on with peace if I know that, you know, it hasn't just been about Mary. It's been about making a difference in some small way with people, those, you know, what the family of humanity or whatever has. That's what has meaning for me. So it's a soul journey. And, you know, one of the blessings of the work that I do is I've been able to have the blessing and the privilege of meeting some of the most beautiful souls on the planet, the most awakened souls. So what better is, you know, I can't think of anything more beautiful than that.
Yeah, you have an amazing job. I think it's so fascinating and intriguing for me also to know all these possibilities, you know. It's like most people in the world have a very limiting belief, but when you step outside of the belief that you think is true and you really are open to it, you meet the most amazing souls. And that makes your world so much more rich and wider and beautiful and magical, actually, if you're open to talk to these kind of people who have a much broader perspective of existence.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really, I understand you completely, that your journey meeting all these souls is amazing. So I'm happy you wrote books about it, so you tell all these experiences to the world. And that's why I want to talk to you, to also spread this knowledge to the world.
I think for me, Silvia, the thing is that so many feel isolated. They feel so alone that it's just them and there's no one else like them. And they feel like they've landed on an alien world where nobody will ever understand, when I'm saying, well, actually, there are lots more like you than you realize.
Yeah.
And that's what's important about writing their stories, is they can read that and think, oh, someone else has had that experience. Oh, thank goodness, somebody, you know, I'm not crazy after all, you know, that there's others like me. And that's the big message, really, is there are many out there like you that have felt alone and felt like they've been dumped here from another planet, and feel like, you know, that that they won't be able to connect with anyone else, when in fact they're all over the planet. And that's the message, really. There's many like you. It's just a matter that we've all got to start now connecting with one another. So
with each other, yeah. And talk about your experiences, talk about your knowledge, talk about, even if it's with a group of people you look for, or online, or make a podcast, or make a video, or write a blog. Or I don't know any website in Holland where you can just look up for the info or meet people. But do you have that in Australia, that you can go to a company to meet up, or to get help with this kind of experiences? Of course you do, but is it like, what kind of places should you look for if you?
Well, some will join different groups, spiritual groups or UFO groups. There is online a lot of star seed organizations where people having experiences and connect to that will connect that way through being online. I have a lady that when people have had sessions with me and they're still having ongoing experiences and just want to talk to someone who's open in the same way they are, they can connect with her, and she creates different little chat sessions and what have you. So people can say, well, this happened last night and this is how it felt, or whatever. And I think that's really important, that we have these communities. So the more people who talk about it and invite others and say, would you like to come over, and if they're local, and say, why don't you come over and we'll all talk together about what's been going on for us, or what we've been experiencing. Because ultimately you can create your own group. You can start, saying, this is what's been going on for me. And you'll be amazed that you might be surprised in your little town or little village or whatever. There's going to be more than just one person that's had these experiences, because it's so vast. And there are so many, but many will never ever talk about it because they don't feel safe to do so. So if you feel brave enough, say, well, I actually have experiences and this is what it's like. Any of you have anything like that? It's funny, my daughter said to me, Mum, anyone who comes to your house seems to have had UFO experiences. And it's quite funny. It could be the plumber, or it could be the window cleaner, or it could be the what's her name. And I said, it's because they come in and they'll say, what do you do? And I'll say, well, I help people who have certain experience. I saw a big UFO the other, 3 weeks ago, and the next thing I hear all about their experiences. And I said, that's why, because I make no bones about the fact that I support people who have these experiences. And they'll either go, oh yeah, or they may say, God, I've had so many of these things go on, and my family's seen this in the farm, and off they go, and they'll tell you their story. But you can start the ball rolling, if you've got the courage to say, this is my experience. It may not be yours, but this has changed me, or whatever. So really it's about a personal disclosure. Do you feel able to do that? Because then you will draw people to you.
True. What I always say in myself is, like, if I want to meet inspiring people, I just say to myself as a mantra, I am a magnet for inspiring people. So if you don't know where to look, you can always say into yourself, I'm a magnet for inspiring people, or people from the same information that you want to know more about. So you just attract them. Because I also believe very strongly in intention. If you set an intention and you don't know where to go, you just set the intention that you want to attract this to your life, or just to find out more about it. Just working with intention works for me very strongly.
Well, you're embodying the frequency. And when people say, well, I've not met anybody like me, I usually say to them, have you accepted it in yourself yet?
That's a good one.
They haven't quite done that. I said, once you own it and it becomes part of you, you will be amazed at who you meet that's having similar experiences. It's the law of attraction.
True.
As the frequency.
Just embody the frequency and then it will come to you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And Mary, can you tell something more about your new research from the last 2 years? Is there something else you want to add, what we didn't speak about, that you really want to share about the new researches of our DNA or something else?
Well, more is coming out about the properties of DNA, but we also have to know that with the DNA, epigenetics has a part to play in that, and that is the intelligence of the cell itself. So that is part of where your belief makes a big difference to how your DNA will operate. So if you have a certain strong belief in something, it will literally affect the DNA or the organization of the DNA through that belief. So, you know, that's really important too. So looking at your beliefs will literally change how you operate as well. And I'll tell you a little account of a wonderful gentleman in the 1930s. He had cactus, and he was a biologist. And he kept saying to the cactus, you don't need to have spines because I'm not going to hurt you. You don't need to have spines because I'm not going to hurt you. And eventually he grew cactus without spines because there was the frequency he was conveying. Think about the potential of that with your own body, you know, and people say, oh, well, you're genetically likely going to get this, or genetically you're going to get that. If you take that belief on, you are actually orchestrating that to happen. But you don't have to take anything on that you are aware of with your DNA if your belief is something stronger than that, because it will alter how your DNA operates. So belief is really, really an important one. It's not just about the DNA, it's about how the intelligence of our thoughts and frequency will alter and change what that is as well. And so it's a very important part of how it all works.
Yeah, definitely. I have a practice in holistic health in Holland. And this is one big important part in my conversations with clients, that their belief in healing is such a big role, and that changes our DNA. And that is the sad thing here, and actually the whole world, that doctors never give hope. They always say, oh, you're never gonna get well, or you have to live with this. Or maybe in the worst case, they say, oh, maybe you have 6 months to live. So the belief is of course going into that direction, what the doctor says, because the doctor has a white coat, he is like on a pedestal, they are right. And if a person believes this, then the body is actually working to this belief. And when they come in my practice, I have to relearn, actually, how do you call this, help them to change their belief in this way of thinking, how their body works. But this is the most important thing, actually, indeed, in health, your belief.
Yeah. And that's something, you know, coming from a therapeutic point of view, is, you know, I meet many that have had old beliefs that have affected all their lives, and they don't realize that up to a certain age, you take on all beliefs, whether they're accurate or not. And you need to look at what you believe and whether they're serving you or whether in fact they're not serving you. And to, you know, one of the things that the 9-year-old many years ago told me, she lives in Sweden, and she said, Mary, human beings are just amazing, but they've got to believe it first. So we have to believe in our potential if this is to manifest. So it's all up to us. It's up to us to make sure that that's what we are encouraging in our psyche, is that belief in what we really are, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I believe we're going to have an amazing future, even if many people say, oh, we're going to have a hard time still. And I say, well, yeah, maybe, but my world is going to be amazing. And I create my world. So even if it's going to be tough on certain parts, doesn't matter. My belief is that my world will be amazing. My life will be amazing. So then I attract the experiences that it will be amazing for me. So that is very important in looking into your future. What is your belief of your future? That is what you're going to attract, the experiences to your belief.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yes. So let me see if I other questions. Yeah, one thing is that I thought was very interesting of Michael and Julia. You remember them in your book?
You'll have to tell me the story around it.
That Michael is like traveling through
Yes.
other portals, dimensions, multiverse, and yes.
That's the end of the book. That's right. That was the chapter that I thought is really going to stretch people.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the reason I wrote it was I wanted people to open up to more possibilities, to more to an understanding. There's so much we don't know about human experience and what is possible and what isn't possible. Julia contacted me, and she's a lovely lady who's had her own out-of-body experiences over the years and what have you anyway, and she's written her own book about that. But what was interesting about Michael was the whole understanding of what it's like in the non-physical world, and how, you know, you come back and you're almost coming back in from the future as well. What was fascinating is the understanding of what things are like as energy, as information from, and it's really hard to describe that really, because
you can't.
You can't. They need to read it and make sense of it. But what it does indicate is why so many can have communications with, you know, physical things that you don't think you can, such as plants, such as minerals and what have you, and that they all have a frequency and they have information. And I think that's what I loved about all of that. It still blows my mind in that way of understanding through being just pure spirit, you know, and operating in all those other levels. That's all I can say about it. You have to read it because it's
you have to read it.
Have to read it. But I deliberately wanted to put that in because it's the next level of understanding about multidimensional reality and the, you know, the multiverse and what we really are when we are not trapped in our physical container, that we are, when we're pure consciousness, what we can actually experience, and the enormity of that in terms of how you interpret things differently once you're in that space to what you rely on with your five senses.
Yeah, and that is actually the new human where we are evolving to.
One of the things that I remind or I suggest to people when they sort of say, well, how is that? How are we going to interpret that? And I go back to the film Lucy, which some people may have seen or not. And although the story is dark in the sense that she takes too much of a particular drug, which activates more of a DNA, and she becomes more and more multidimensional because of it, and she ultimately becomes light, what it's indicating is that very process that as we get activated, we're going to become more and more multidimensional in our awareness. We're going to be able to perceive more and more of true reality. And that, I think, is, you know, that's how I see it, us evolving, but without the drugs, but more through frequency.
Yeah, and can you tell something about your view on ascension symptoms? Because that is what I hear in my practice, of course, that people have vague symptoms. And that's, I also believe, because of the evolving frequencies that our body needs to adjust to. And how is your view on ascension symptoms? Do you do something with that, or?
I think that the soul has orchestrated what it needs to do in a particular body to get it to that other level. For some, it will be extreme tiredness. They need to sleep more, for example. They may find that their diet changes, that they no longer want to eat certain foods or drink certain, you know, they may change their drinking habits as well, for example. They may find that they're not as tolerant of certain things around them. There's less of a tolerance to noise, for example. There's less of a tolerance to, you know, being in buildings and structures. They may find they need more to be more in nature, where they can ground and what have you. I would say, however you're feeling, and some people feel, you know, there's something wrong with me, or palpitations is another one. Some people, you know, will get palpitations and what have you. Doesn't necessarily mean you're ill, but it does mean that you become more sensitive to frequencies around you and this kind of thing. What I say to people is, talk to that other part of you, that wise part of you, and just ask, what do I need to do to stabilize and what have you. I mean, we've all got our own healer self, and I believe, you know, you talk to the healer self, however you see that within you, and say, right, is there anything I need to do, or is there anything I need to know, and see what comes to you in that quiet space. If you quietly, whether you meditate or just sit quietly or just lie quietly in your bed and say, is there anything I need to know about what's happening now? And listen to that inner voice, because I think that's the best way of getting past what needs to happen in your body, and listening to your body. You know that very well. It's listening to your body. What's it saying to you? What is it saying you need, or whatever? And I think it's as simple as that, really. I don't think it's complicated.
No. Well, I'm very happy that we talked about all these subjects. And is there something else that you want to add for the people who are listening to our beautiful conversation about our DNA, the new human, and our future? Yeah, is there something you want to add?
I'd just like to say, if you've got children, the most important thing I get asked is, what can I do to help my kids who might be one of these new children? Is listen to them, to make sure that when they're talking to you about different things, that you hear them. I think that's the most important thing that you can do for them, because if they feel heard, they will grow as they're meant to, because they will feel loved and accepted without the judgment. That's with the kids, but also listen to yourself. Listen to that part of you that knows you come here. You've come here for a reason. You've come here to make a difference. And you know, the one thing I always say is the soul makes sure it comes in with all the tools it needs for this particular lifetime. So you have everything you need to be all that you come here to be, as long as you trust that and trust yourself. So that's about all I can say.
Yeah, then I want to add something, that what I notice in my practice is that I can scan somebody's frequencies of the voice, and then this software, which is based also on quantum physics and psychology, can scan the frequencies in the voice, and then it says something about your character, personality, and your patterns, but also the limiting patterns that keeps your body in a frequency that can impact the organs. So what I see in a collective energy is that actually everybody has a deep sense of insecurity. And this collective energy of insecurity that stops people actually from speaking their truth or coming out in the open to do something with their feeling of, I want to do something for the world. So yeah, your advice on dealing with this insecurity, how do you help people with this?
Well, it's all really the insecurity, and often it's fear of not being safe, fear of not being able to cope, and all those kinds of things. And I'm going to mention a little story about a lovely gentleman who challenged the system. He was forever seeing and challenging what wasn't right. And I remember saying to him, you know, his name's Ellis, and I said, Ellis, I said, you know, because he'd have all this, the helicopters and the cars outside and all this kind of stuff, because he'd challenge the status quo. And I said, don't you ever get really scared, you know, because of what's all this, you know? And he says, Mary, he said, they've taken me out a number of lifetimes. I just come back and do it again. And I thought to myself, you know what? That makes a lot of sense to me. I've come here to do a job. Do I want to do the job, or do I want to come back and do it again? I think I'll do it this time. So that's my philosophy. Do you want to do something? Have you come here to do something? Well, do it. Do it. Because what ultimately have you got to fear but fear itself? We all know that.
True, 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 true. And it would be such a shame if you're on your bed at the end of your life and you think, oh, I wish I've done it. And then you have to wait another lifetime to do it again.
Exactly.
So you better do it now. You better do it now. Oh, well, thanks. Oh, and are you still working as a hypnotherapist, Mary, that people can come to you?
Absolutely. I've never been busier. Absolutely.
Oh.
And I also help them with their multidimensional side. If they're opening up and they're not quite sure how it all works, I can show them how to do that as well. So that's another part of my work. But hypnosis, regression, all of those things. And also sometimes just letting them, they want to just share what's going on for them. You know, of course, doing the conferences as well and all that. So interviews keeps me out of mischief, or in mischief, probably is a better word.
And do you work online, that people come can meet you online? Of course.
Absolutely. A lot of my
Also
work.
for a regression, do you do that also online?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no reason why it can't be done online. I've done many that way, because, you know, they could be in Poland, they could be in the US or Canada or Brazil. Doesn't matter. As long as they've got a good internet connection and they speak English, at least as one of their languages, so we can understand one another. It's not a problem.
Cool. Then everybody should call Mary if you're really looking into your cosmic journey and you are stuck looking for this actually. And are you also traveling the world now for lectures? Do you do that already or not?
I haven't for the last couple of years because of what's been going on. And although I might be coming to the UK next year in August for their expo in Manchester, if all the restrictions are gone, because I'm not traveling while there's any restrictions. Yeah. So once that happens, then I'll do some traveling again. But in the meantime, I'm doing conferences online, all sorts of things like that. So I'm keeping very busy. So
nice.
I haven't missed the traveling at all, actually.
No.
It's been actually very peaceful and restful, less stressful doing it from home. But I dare say that I'll have to look at that next year. We'll see how things unfold.
Yes, and if you come to the UK, we should organize a big lecture here in Holland. So you should, because it's very close, then you should just hop on the plane. Okay. 1 hour, I think, or 2 hour flying, and then you're here.
Okay, well, we can think of that as well. Okay.
Thank you, Mary, for tonight. I see it's dark at your area. It's nighttime.
It is. Oops.
Here we start the day. Here it's 10 o'clock. But thank you again. And then I wish you the best in your exposure, disclosure information, and helping people becoming the new human.
Oh, thank you so much, Silvia. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Cool. Thank you, Mary. I love it.